Irashaimase. I'm Joe, here with my co-host Stan.
Hello and greetings.
And we've got another Genji video for you all, because I know how much people love these ones. Either that or I'm just being a bit of a troll with some of the titles. Anyways, last time on Genji, we had the Rokujo affair, which was a total nightmare. And we had Yugao, where it was not a total nightmare. It was a dream until it turned into a nightmare. And honestly, the first of these two episodes is pretty good. But you can see that as the affair is progressing, rumors are being spread. And Genji's becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the affair. Because, honestly, she's kind of clingy and needy and stifling. And the thing is, she keeps getting pushier and pushier, and Genji is starting to get a little uncomfortable with her possessiveness. Possessiveness in someone, especially someone who's more interested in you than you are in them, is an uncomfortable feeling. Yeah, I think we can say we've all had moments like that, and where it is discomforting. We've all also been that person at times. But the difference between Rokujo and the rest of us is that when it's been us who were slightly more into the other person, I think we can say most people were like, oh, okay, I got to back off. I got to get my head back on my shoulders, and I got to distract myself, be it with work or a dog or I don't know. And, you get your head back on your shoulders. While Rokujo is going full yandere, on a level that's even beyond most yandere in anime. As for Genji, he's really uncomfortable. And what does Genji do when he's uncomfortable? Go start a new affair. Because, after all, it's a winning strategy. And who does he start an affair with? Ironically, someone really healthy for him. Yugao. A 19-year-old woman. He doesn't know her age, by the way. But he knows the general age. A beautiful young woman who is smitten with love at first sight for Genji. This in spite of the fact that she's a single mom. And a mom who was cast aside by Tono Shujo, who has, I don't think, any interest in their kid. So Yugao, of course, is in a weird position socially, especially with that culture. Genji, though, is immediately struck by her poem as she sends him a bit of a clumsy love poem. Moved by her evident attempt at a love poem, and fascinated by her great beauty, he kisses her hand and recites his own poem. And then returns the next day to actually treat her with a bit of respect. And Yugao introduces herself as Yugao. And from there, they hit it off really well. Honestly, these two should have been married. And no, I'm serious. They should have been. Rokujo is informed and is displeased by this affair and goes a little haywire over it. Then again, Aoi no Ue goes a little nuts over it because she's upset that Genji had gone for a woman 4 years her senior when she thought 4 years between her and him was too much in turn. And she's upset that he chose to sleep with someone who's so far below her rank, so that she feels humiliated. And how can I show myself or at least my face in town? Well, it's not like you really show your face in town normally, Aoi, so nothing to worry about.
You're already a femme fatale.
Basically. And Genji, for his part, feels no remorse because he's in love. And the romantic thing is that he confesses to Yugao that he thinks she might be a soulmate, and falls so head over heels, endlessly in love, it is hard not to feel bad for him. And, of course, Rokujo, like in the novel, turns into an Oni and proceeds to then lead Genji away and then go strangle Yugao. That's not good. But what happens next is the important part for this video. Genji is upset about this death, this loss. And now we're getting to this video's episodes. Genji falls terribly sick. An investigation is performed to ascertain who's guilty because, you do have to clear up his name or determine whether or not he's actually a psycho. But what they find is that he was innocent and there was the scent of incense at the scene of the crime. Genji has no idea what happened and honestly doesn't know. He was basically an eyewitness. So, of course, because it was his, I guess you say, common law wife who died, he didn't even notice the incense, really. He was just so upset. The servants noticed. He didn't. So this kind of blurs things in the investigation. And naturally, what are they supposed to think? And on top of that, he's very sick. So they naturally think that he might be a second victim of this Oni. So naturally, they're trying to figure out, okay, if he's also a victim, should we have him exorcised? At which point they decide, yes. And he's sent off to the north to visit a Buddhist shrine and be cleansed. Genji willingly does so as soon as he's healthy enough to travel. Now, how he gets healthy enough is that he receives a letter along with some honey from Fujitsubo. Naturally, he receives a lot of other gifts from everyone else, the most noteworthy being a fur pelt from his dad. And he reads the letter, which is begging him to eat the honey because it's very medicinal for him. So he does, gets over his fever and his cold, and then goes north, has himself exorcised, which, okay, and prays for quite some time, which, that's good for him. Before he goes to return home. On the way home, he happens by a small home where there's a young girl being raised by her grandmother. She's being picked on for being a crybaby, and her Tsundere, her bird, her pet, was let loose by another one of the little kids. And her grandmother tells her, stop crying, otherwise the little kids will laugh at you. I don't care, she says. At which point I said, well, they should laugh at you. I'm joking. No, actually, those little boys were horrible to her. That's just wrong. But it is a funny scene. But it's also a touching one when she first sets eyes on Genji and he returns the bird to her with a smile. And she falls at once into a kind of puppy love for him. Genji notes her resemblance to Fujitsubo and decides to go home, at least in the anime. He goes home, where he proceeds to have a run-in soon enough with Fujitsubo at a hidden shrine outside the Imperial Palace, which this shrine is basically their secret place that they used to go to as kids. And, how shall I put it? He then sneaks off to see her when she goes to the 3rd Avenue, where her parents live, and proceeds to seduce her. Next episode starts with the affair. Doesn't go over very well. She decides to dump him. And they both pray that, their fates will be kind to them. The fates are busy laughing their asses off at the two of them as they throw monkey wrench after monkey wrench at this. Starting with Fujitsubo turning up pregnant. Then she later gives birth to a boy.
If it was a girl, then that could easily be swept under the rug.
But it's a boy. He's in the line of succession.
Oops.
Yeah, when Genji says oops, he really means it. Holy mac, this is a really, really bad turn. And of course, you can't tell the truth. Law would dictate Genji loses his neck or maybe gets banished. And she might lose her neck. And the child might lose its neck. This is just a really bad turn of events. Naturally, she's very depressed and very melancholic about it. And she also really smashed the affair to hell. Genji, for his part, is utterly depressed at the ending of this long-term love of his for her, because he had a torch burning for her for most of his life. and ends up trying to visit his friend Tono Chujo to cheer himself up, even though Tono Chujo would probably mock him and kind of make him feel worse. Now, actually, I've got a former friend who was like Tono Chujo, who did the same thing as he does, negging, it's called, which is to lower your self-esteem and make yourself feel better at the expense of someone else. It's not a very nice thing to do. And Tono Chujo kind of does that to Genji. But Genji's really depressed, and monstrously depressed people tend to kind of slit their wrists, both proverbially and literally. But please don't do that if you're feeling depressed. There are people you can talk to. And there are people Genji could talk to, and should talk to. Maybe not his dad, maybe not his ex, but maybe someone like Koremitsu, or his father-in-law or something. I don't know. Well, maybe not about the affair of Fujitsubo, but there's his wife, whom he happens to end up kind of talking to, but he stops on a visit for her, just a very brief one, and looks out to the snow and just stops to appreciate the view, which is something the Japanese often do. They're fascinated by winter. And the visuals in this part of the episode are perfect. And honestly, winter in Japan is a beautiful thing. So that makes sense that he'd stop and be struck by the beauty of just this winter wonderland before him. Aoi no Ue expresses kindness for him and invites him to drink sake with her. Rice wine. The two have a drink and enjoy a rare moment of wedded bliss between them, appreciating each other's company. And Aoi, now she's the OG Tsundere, and has always been a little abusive in her passion for him and her jealousy because she was doing the lady dove protest too much. She touches his hand and tells him, "How can I leave you alone when you're this depressed? What happened to that overflowing confidence of yours? Stand up tall. Be a man. You're tougher than this." And basically tries to give him a pep talk. Genji, moved, proceeds to seduce her. Pulling her into a kiss, she's more than happy to reciprocate, and she ceases to be a femcel in that moment. And they cease to be strangers and become, I guess, a happily married couple. Which, I guess you could say it is her fault, but it's mostly Genji's. Sorry.
Of course.
I had to enunciate and emphasize that point. Now, what did you think of these two episodes?
My common reaction was, no, don't.
With Fujitsubo.
Yes.
And then with Aoi?
Finally. I mean...
His wife's a knockout. She's a bombshell.
Oh, yeah. First, you have the Yandere Klinger. And then...
Yuga was pretty good.
Yeah, she was pretty good.
Fujitsubo? What are you thinking, bro?
A Mori's wet dream. Pardon the saying.
And then you have Aoi. So, he finally... il a enfin tenté sa chance. That is to say, tried his luck, sort of, with the right lady. You see, best 1 out of 4, right? Like, my gosh, what a total disaster. I guess one can say one thing about Genji that makes him such an interesting character. Despite being good at everything he puts his mind to it, like, he is a smart guy. He's a genius. He's an incredible poet. He's an incredible archer, horseback rider, swordsman. Even an amazingly prescient young man with an incredible ability to see through people. He's blessed with every fortune in the world. And yet he's just a screw-up. He's a perpetual screw-up. The thing is, he's one of those guys who, he's very strange. He has everything, but he just cannot resist just kind of, how shall I put it? destroying his own life. He's self-destructive in a way. And it's a very peculiar thing. And it is very peculiar for individuals to screw up quite this badly. But it does happen when some people are blessed with every fortune in the world. Now, some people don't have many blessings. And they screw up, but they keep trying. And that's actually commendable. Genji's one of those people who just has everything, like I said, and just keeps screwing it up. And that's really funny, in a way, when you're watching this in a very dark way. I would almost argue this anime is a bit of a dark comedy. But it's so very bleak. And the trouble is that after the Rokujo affair, he now has a ghost stalking him everywhere he goes. Which, okay, he wasn't a very good ex with Rokujo. He gaslighted and ditched her and ghosted her. Sort of, no pun intended. But I don't think he deserves to have a ghost stalk him. That seems a little disproportionate. And the thing with Fujitsubo, yeah, I don't know how to judge that. Like,
she was too clingy and possessive.
Rokujo, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, I had moved on to Fujitsubo. Fujitsubo, for her part, this was a disaster waiting to happen.
Exactly.
I think she had done the right thing to cut them off from each other. And then when she stopped doing that, that was not a good idea. But, with that said, we'll likely be writing an article soon about this, because why not? And on that note, you should check out our Substack, because we write some pretty good articles over there. And don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button to stay tuned for the next video. On to the next episodes. Next up, we have Genji dancing. Yeah, actually just does a dance for his pops. It's not as skeevy as it sounds. Actually, it's a traditional Japanese dance. So get whatever you were thinking out of your head. And what happens is that one of his, I guess you could say his brother's relations, because they're half-brothers, basically his half-brother's aunt, who has no biological relation to Genji, is basically almost, well, let's just say she'd like more than a short private dance with Genji. And she's basically perving on him all throughout the dance. But then she invites him over, sort of, basically seduces him and leads him. Well, before that, she leads him on a short little runaround. But she seduces him, then later visits him. And it's during that visit that Genji concludes, because he began investigating her, what he already suspected, that she's actually engaged to his brother. And she breaks down sobbing. Now, previously, her sister went over to abuse her verbally, and it turns out everything in her life is decided for her, and she's depressed by this. So the affair of Genji is just her needing an outlet. And because she can't, well, basically, she doesn't believe in wasting her time quite as much as the American elites do with their stupid golf. Because golf is basically just people puttering around, wasting their time. Worse than if they stared into space. Come on, people, do something productive. Even video games is more productive than this. Yes, I have an insane hatred of golf. But this lady is needing an outlet. Genji's that outlet. Genji, for his part, feels bad for her, but also feels bad for his brother, because his brother fancies her. Yes, they're nephew and aunt. It's weird. And she doesn't really fancy her nephew. Can't blame her. Now, don't get me wrong. Suzaku's a really nice guy, but it's weird. It's incestuous. It's disgusting. But Genji himself kind of understands her better than anyone else does. That being said, at the end of the episode, Genji starts to decide, you know what, let's distance myself from these affairs and just focus on the wife because she ends up, it turns out, knocked up with his kid. So naturally he decides to start entertaining the idea of maybe living as man and wife and actually taking care of his wife, like he should have from the very beginning. Aoi ends up happy with this result, if temporarily so. After a brief wrestling match, which he wins, Genji gets the blessings of Tono Chujo, and then the rumors of Aoi's pregnancy spread to the craziest woman in all of Kyoto, or I should say Henkyo. I mean Rokujo.
I mean Nihon.
What?
I mean Japan.
Nihon, yeah. She's decidedly, on the hot crazy scale, crazier than she is hot. And that's saying something. Like, this woman is nuts. She's a total fruitcake.
It's been years, lady. Let it go.
You got dumped. Like, this lady makes Atya from the Rome series look sane. And here's the thing. She's getting jealous and murderous towards his wife. You're the mistress, woman, like in the cast-off one. What are you doing? So, naturally, this chick, who, well, is a bit of a fruitcake, ends up deciding to go to a festival that Genji's been put in charge of to organize. And she runs into traffic. And on the other end of the traffic is Aoi no Ue and one of her father's men. So, this guy who serves Aoi's dad and a servant of Rokujo start having a bit of a fight. At which point, she's told to basically get out of the way. Aoi basically is startled to discover it's her husband's ex. Rokujo is startled to discover it's Aoi. And Rokujo is basically, her carriage is knocked aside, and Aoi just continues on her way. And Genji pays his respects to his wife, very respectfully with a warm smile in her direction, as he's wandering off to do imperial duties. Rokujo is peeved. Now, here's my question. Would she have reacted the same way, murderously, I mean, had it been anyone but Genji's wife? I wonder if she would have reacted the same way if, let's say, it was just some rando public official's wife whose carriage knocked hers aside. And I kind of think she would. She seems on the nuttier side.
She was jealous of Yugao, and Yugao had nothing to do with her.
Yeah. And
the
Aoi
fact that
is a complete innocent.
The fact that Rokujo is still obsessing over
Genji, who's basically dumped her years ago,
shows that, yeah, she would have done it anyways.
Yeah. She's got an obsessive personality. Genji is very concerned because he knows she's a bit of a fruitcake and that she's oversensitive. He knows she leans left. So, that's something a little worrisome. At which point, one has to ask, what were you thinking sticking your, into her? But Genji was not thinking with big Genji. He was thinking with small Genji. This is just such a stupid turn of events, because he really should not have ever gone for Rokujo. And as for Rokujo, it's been years. That said, Aoi soon gets attacked by Demon, because why not? That's a natural response when you got dumped for the guy's wife. You send a demon after him. Rokujo starts having fainting spells, and her Oni attacks Aoi. Aoi ends up ill. Aoi gives birth. At which point, Genji is actually deciding, what? Enough with the cheating. I'll be a faithful husband. I'll be a good husband. But good things can't happen to him. Aoi is very happy to forgive him and is content with the love of her husband and that she's now a mom. That night, she's murdered. I mean, why? And when Rokujo hears the news, she turns and reveals that now, in her waking hours, she's possessed by the demon. And that Rokujo, well, ordinary Rokujo, and the Oni have begun to merge into one person, into one being. And this is a metaphor for jealousy being something that devours you whole and leaves nothing behind. And so it started to destroy Rokujo and devour her soul. And so there's nothing left. Or soon there will be nothing left in the end. But of course, academics are stupid enough to interpret this as being some sort of conspiracy between Aoi and Rokujo. Here, I'll try looking it up. Here it is. This really stupid theory on Wikipedia. It's on the Aoi no Ue wiki page. It's a really stupid theory. And actually, someone now to erase it. Okay, of course. Let's see. The relationship between the two women may be that between victim and aggressor if one follows the traditional interpretation of spirit possession. Now, Royal Tyler, the original translator, interprets it this way. And this is supposed to be how you're supposed to interpret it. But there are academics and people on Wikipedia who are stupid enough to interpret it otherwise. Or that between accomplices expressing their discontent with the Heian system of polygamous marriage. Of Genji, obviously. So, when Rokujo's spirit murders Aoi, it is the two women somehow expressing discontent with Genji and the polygamous nature of Heian society. So, if I were to murder someone, it would be that person and myself acting as accomplices and expressing discontent with the current system. Like, the stupid here is just incredible. And I'm tempted to try to see if I can edit this. Like, just start editing. I wonder if I can. Let's see. Because this is beyond stupid. No, I don't think I can. Yeah. Well, I wish I could, but that's just... It's just...
self-centered.
Well, it's stupid. And, like...
It's so-called academics projecting their own insecurities and their own narcissism
yeah, and I'm like, how does this even make sense? And I know we've deviated from the anime, and we shouldn't have, but it's like, how do you... What? Oh, okay, it's Doris Bargain, a woman's weapon, spirit possession, and the tale of Genji. Okay, so Doris Bargain is a really stupid woman. It has to be said, like, she must be incredibly dumb. It's one of those things where...
It's self-centered. They relate to Rokujo because these academics, they relate with Rokujo because they've been dumped by a guy. Even after over a decade, they're still upset or being dumped by the one guy who... I've heard of a couple of cases where it's like, dude, that was high school. You're in your 30s.
Yeah. In this case, it's just... This is supposed to be Rokujo who's a yandere. The Japanese understand that this is simply part of the narrative. That this was Murasaki Shikibu's intention. That you have a mistress killing the wife. I would argue it's more about human jealousy and about how hatred and jealousy and can devour you whole. And the interesting thing about Genji Monogatari is that the Empress Dowager and Hokujo are both devoured by envy. The meaning of the story is that envy can destroy a human being. I think Murasaki was really trying to, in some ways, at least with their stories, give a warning about the nature of envy. And that, you got to be careful. And even Tono Chujo is kind of devoured by envy. So this is not just about women. This is about men and women. If you look at, say, the Iliad, it is about wrath, how rage can consume and destroy a human being. You have the Odyssey where Odysseus is lost in life. That's what it's a metaphor for. He's lost and adrift in life. And his wife is waiting for him to find himself again and become the man she knows him to be, the man he should be. You look at, and the man, I should say, that she needs him to be. The Aeneid is about duty, and is about how, at least with regards to Dido, and also about how pride can devour human beings and destroy them from the inside out. Now, the prequel to the Iliad, the story of Paris, Helen, and whatnot, and I would argue is about greed, not lust, greed. Agamemnon longs for the lands west of Troy, so it's about greed. He wants to, or maybe I should say gluttony, he wants to devour those lands. And there will be nothing left after he's devoured them. It's about gluttony and how it's devoured him. That's the thing about classic stories. Oftentimes, there's one of the 7 sins that devours a human being until there's nothing left. So really, when you look at, let's say, Princess Mononoke, the phrase, go see with eyes unclouded or eyes unbiased, is a very apt one. The thing is, Nago was destroyed by his hatred for human beings. And Eboshi was almost destroyed by her greed. And arguably, Okujo is destroyed by her envy. And when you look at, for example, the tale of Heike, Heike shows, I would argue, pride, as the Minamoto are eaten from the inside out by their pride and their egos as they turn against one another and destroy each other. At no point can Yoshinaka, I believe, and Yoshitsune and Yoritomo are all very proud men. And even Noriyori to an extent. So the thing is, the world's not big enough for all of them. They must destroy each other. And that's pride. So you have really, in a lot of great stories, this sort of great sin, that this great flaw that destroys a human being who's otherwise greater than the average person. Rokujo is far greater a woman than any other. She's more cultivated, she's more beautiful, she's more learned, she's a better poet. She's a brilliant woman. She could easily become the greatest poet of her age. She could become as great as Murasaki Shikibu. But what destroys her? Her envy and jealousy over Genji. If she had aspired higher than, let's say, Genji, she could have really, really outshone everyone. But really the story is about how she destroys herself in her jealousy and almost destroys Genji. And Genji, the story is also about him, obviously, but the reason he could not love her is because deep down, her jealousy wasn't an attractive trait. Why would he stay when she's jealous over every little thing he does? And that's it. There is a deeper meaning, but to her murdering Aoi, there's no deeper meaning. This Doris Bargain woman, I'm astounded at how stupid she is to propose such a theory. And only an academic could be that stupid. But maybe she should have just stuck to stuff like, I don't know, writing. Nah, actually, should have just stuck to reading books and maybe doing laundry.
And getting over to whichever boy dumped her back when she was in high school.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to defend academics like that, don't care. YouTube will probably strike this video because we went on a tangent. But whatever. We've written far more academic articles over in Substack. Maybe we'll write one on this topic.
Yeah.
Tearing at a new one. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out our Substack, where we write very superior articles to Doris Bargain's, and we also write a great deal of stories and even have a Heishi Monogatari serial novel we're publishing. So until next time, do take care, and don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button here.